Wall Street overcomes concerns over the escalation in the Israel-Hamas war. Stocks open lower but recover to close with gains across the board despite geopolitical tensions. Asian markets open higher with the Nikkei surging nearly 2%. The gift Nifty is also indicating a higher start for the Indian market. Oil prices rally another 4% with Brent crude hitting $88 a barrel. Safe haven buying due to the war in West Asia also sees gold rally to a one-month high. Israel begins a blanket blockade of Gaza, cutting off essential supplies including food, fuel and medicine. Tel Aviv's forces continue to pound the strip amid skirmishes on Israel's northern border with Lebanon. Israel's allies, the US, France, Germany, Italy and the UK, issue a joint statement backing its right to defend itself, but importantly also recognize the legitimate aspirations of the Palestinian people. Good morning in the Mumbai News Center. I'm Sonal Bhutra and you're watching Power Breakfast. Those are the top headlines. Of course, the geopolitical tensions in West Asia continues to take the center stage, and that's something that is having an impact overall. But first up, as always, let's take a look at what the Asian markets are doing. Despite whatever we are seeing in terms of geopolitical uncertainty, these markets have come back. Most of them were shut for a holiday yesterday. Taiwanese markets are still shut. Hang Seng is higher by 2%. Nikkei also higher by 2.3%. Both these markets are trading after a day's break. So we are seeing good gains coming through across the Asian markets. If we look at the other indices as well, something like a Kospi, which is up 1.2%, Straits Times is up 0.95%. So across the board, we are seeing some buying coming in the Asian markets. And if we talk about the gift Nifty, that'll come up for you on the screen, and that one is indicating that this start for our own markets could be strong. It's an 80-point implied open that the gift Nifty is suggesting at these levels. So let's see which way things go for our own markets. After that fall that we saw yesterday, there could be some recovery which could be underway today. Let's talk about the U.S. markets now. Stocks staged to come back to end Monday's trading session higher, with the Dow Jones rising close to 200 points, the S&P up 27, and the Nasdaq Composite closing with a 53-point gain, as investors shrugged off pressures from higher oil prices and the growing tensions between Israel and Hamas. All the three major indices were down earlier in the day. At session lows, the Dow had shed over 150 points, while the S&P lost 0.6%. The Nasdaq pulled back more than 1% before recovering. Okay, on that note, let's get you some important opinion coming in from Alliance's Chief Economic Advisor, Mohammad Al-Arian, Meera Pandit of JP Morgan Asset Management, and Rockefeller International's Ruchir Sharma.
Is this conflict contained, or does it bring in other parties? So far, the markets are trading as if it's contained. But if this expands and brings in other parties, then the outlook is for even a weaker global economy, even more inflationary pressures, and the markets are going to be finding it hard to deal with that.
We think about the conflict that is unfolding right now overseas. Of course, we cannot underscore how vast the implications are from a humanitarian perspective and from a political perspective. And of course, it's going to send some jitters through markets. But what we have seen over time is that typically the impact in the longer run from geopolitical events tends to be somewhat contained. So what we're watching right now as we see this conflict unfold from an economic and market perspective is, does it widen out? Do more countries within the Middle East get involved? What is the pass-through effect potentially to things like oil? But at this point, it's day one. It's really early to say. We just advise clients to keep their cool and composure at this time as things unfold.
Most Middle Eastern markets were down only about 2%. So which is that here are these markets in the eye of the storm. The Israeli market was down close to 4%. But generally, the Middle Eastern markets in the eye of the storm were only down a couple of percent. Very different from what the news headlines would make us believe. So, and those markets, remember, many of those markets are dominated by local investors. And they have pretty good knowledge about what's happening on the ground. So that, for me, was the real tell, which is that it's being perceived so far as a localized conflict, as something the region is used to seeing. And however terrible this tragedy may have been, but the tell from the markets was something which I think really set the base for what the U.S. market ended up doing today.
Okay, all right. It's time to get you the final update in our global market wrap this morning. European markets ended Monday's trading session lower, with the French CAC down 39 points, the German DAX sliding over 100 points, and the British FTSE closing flat. The pan-European stock 600 edged 0.3% lower, led by retailer, travel, and leisure stocks. European airline stocks, including British Airways owner IAG, Air France, and Lufthansa, fell between 4 to 8% after suspending flights to Tel Aviv. Shares of oil and gas company Energean tumbled over 17%, making it to the top loser list on the stock 600 after the company announced that operations will continue after the attack on Israel. The company is listed on both the London and the Tel Aviv stock exchanges. Okay, all right. That's the entire global market action. We, of course, will keep bringing you updates on this one, but we have our research team joining in now with what the trade setup looks like, the stocks that are likely to be in the news, and the action from the F&O space as well. Hey, guys, a very good morning to all of you. Rima, some recovery that we can see in the Asian markets. What are the market cues that we are watching out for?
As you said it, right, the recovery in the global markets, the fact that U.S. markets yesterday shrugged off the boiling tensions in Middle East, the conflict there, and closed up with strength. Dow up 200 points, the S&P 500 gaining more than 0.5%, and that's lent support to Asia this morning, and the GIFT Nifty is suggesting a positive start. The level from here on, at least in the immediate term on the way up, will be the 50-day moving average at 19,602. On the way down, it will be yesterday's intraday low at 19,480. So these are the two immediate markers that the street will be watching closely. But what also provided support to the global markets, as you pointed out, were less dovish comments from two Fed members, which lend some confidence going into the November FOMC meet. Brent crude prices are pretty much where they were yesterday, but the dollar index has eased quite significantly. Yesterday, when we were in closing bell, the dollar index has hit a level of 106.5. So from that level overnight, we've seen a considerable cooling off. As we've been highlighting, getting into the thick of the earnings season starting tomorrow with TCS. So keep your eye on that. In terms of flows, the FIs net sold 998 crore, while the DIIs net bought 2,661 crore in the cash market yesterday. Back to you.
Okay, all right. That's all about the market cues. Thank you so much, Rima, for that. But a lot of stocks that will be in focus. Quarter 2 updates, earnings. Well, Surbhi has been busy. She has that list. Good morning, Surbhi.
Good morning. So I have quite a few stocks on my radar. The first one is Dr. Reddy's. The company has been named a defendant in a complaint filed by Mayo Clinic and LifePoint Corporate. Now, they allege improper restraining of competition and a shared monopoly of a drug. Phoenix Mill came up with a Q2 update. The total consumption was up 20% on a year-on-year basis, and the retail collections were up 23%. Concor, again with the Q2 business update, the EXIM volumes were up 3.5%, the domestic volumes were up 26%, and the total volumes were up 8% on a year-on-year basis. Musgout Dog, the company signs a letter of intent with a European client, and this is for construction of a multi-purpose hybrid power vessel. GR Infra Projects, the Dibang Power Consortium, which is the JV between Patel Engineering and GR Infra, they have executed an agreement worth 3,637 crores with NHPC. And lastly, Genus Power, the company has won 2 orders worth 3,115 crores from advanced metering infrastructure service providers.
Okay, all right. Thank you so much for that, Surbhi. But a lot of action from the F&O space as well. Manglam is joining us now. Hey, Manglam.
Good morning. So yesterday, there was some weakness in our markets, but nothing really to worry about, largely because now there has been, worries globally which have been shrugged off. The GIFT Nifty is indicating a positive start. So the only thing we'll be watching out for are, how the mid-cap index performs, because yesterday that was an underperformer. It fell about 2 times the frontline index. And the second thing, we'll be watching out for what the Nifty Bank does as well, because that was an underperformer as well. The IT stocks, of course, will be in focus ahead of earnings this week. Importantly, if you just take a look at the low and the high on the Nifty yesterday, it was a 100-point range, and the Nifty closed closer to the 19,500 mark. And now the GIFT Nifty indicates that there would be a start closer or much above yesterday's high as well, and above the 50-day moving average of 19,602. Important to see what the FIs are doing in, the cash as well as the futures market. Nothing worrisome out there. We saw a sale of close to around 1,000 crores in the cash market by the FIs, much lower than what we've seen in the past as well. And at the same time, in index futures too, the net long stands stable at around 27%. The one data point that stood out yesterday was the massive selling in index calls. 10,345 crore worth selling by FIs in index options, and they added 1.3 lakh calls versus just 8,500 puts. So to that extent, the opening will be extremely crucial because the FIs have written a fair amount of calls at 19,600 as well as 19,800. So the 19,600 call has a premium of 50 rupees, making your first resistance at 19,650. And were we to cross that, these call writers will cover their positions and take the market all the way higher to that 19,800 mark, which is why we've seen some punt buying out there. Why do I say these marks are important? Because at the 50-day moving average, the Nifty is just above that 19,600 mark, and the 20-day moving average is just below 19,800 as well. The other thing we'll be watching out for will be the Fin Nifty, because it is a Tuesday, Fin Nifty weekly options expiry. Just keep an eye on a couple of stocks. MCX, after a big move yesterday, has entered F&O ban. L&T Finance Holdings is also in F&O ban. And we did see a fair amount of long positions being added on HCL Tech, making the IT stocks, again, important for this week.
Oh, yes, they will continue to be very important earnings ahead, and the other factors that you mentioned as well. Thank you guys for joining us and prepping us up for this trading ahead. We'll slip into a break. Up next, we'll get you the latest on the ongoing conflict between Israel and Palestinian militant group Hamas on the other side. Stay tuned. Welcome back. It's time to get you the latest on the conflict in West Asia. Israel continues to strike targets in the Gaza Strip, but it has also begun a blanket blockade of Gaza, cutting off essential supplies, including food, fuel, and medicine from the territory. NBC's Josh Ledman joins us with all the details.
Well, the death toll among Israelis has now climbed to at least 800, according to Israeli officials, including those 9 American citizens that the United States confirmed earlier today were among those that have been killed. And on the Palestinian side, the Gaza health authorities are now saying that at least 560 people have been killed, with some 2,900 people injured. Now, throughout the day, we've seen the Israeli military conducting strikes within the Gaza Strip, demolishing various buildings, including homes that they say are associated with Hamas leaders. And just in the last few minutes, we heard from the Al-Qassam brigades. This is the militant wing of Hamas responding to those Israeli strikes. And they say from now on, every time Israel strikes a home in Gaza without warning, Hamas is going to kill one of the Israeli hostages that is taken. So that is a warning, essentially, from Hamas, not for Israel not to conduct any strikes in Gaza without warning, or they're going to kill one of those American hostages. Because while we've seen those airstrikes, we have not yet seen an Israeli ground incursion into the Gaza Strip, which is widely anticipated. Earlier today, the defense minister of Israel saying that they are conducting a full siege of the Gaza Strip, meaning no food, no water, no electricity going into that strip. He says they are fighting against human animals and they are going to behave as such.
Okay, all right. So that is the update on what's happening in Israel. But even as the fighting continues, Israel's allies, France, Germany, Italy, and the UK and the United States have issued a joint statement expressing their support for the Israeli cause and defending Israel's right to defend itself. Importantly, the statement also recognizes the legitimate aspirations of the Palestinian people and support freedom and justice for both Israelis and Palestinians. Okay, all right. We'll move on from that. Manisha Gupta will join us now with all the update with what's happening in the commodity space and how this is impacting crude oil prices as well. Hi, Manisha. Good morning.
Hi, morning, and thank you for that. Well, the crude oil prices after those gains that we saw yesterday seem to be holding around that $88 a barrel mark. Well, the U.S. markets will open today after a long weekend. Remember, yesterday was the Columbus holiday, so reactions from U.S. participants will be seen in the markets today. Having said that, there are concerns over the escalation in geopolitical tensions, and we are looking at various Middle East countries also try to curb output to ensure that the prices stay where they are. So this is still a developing story, and we have seen hedge funds go long yet again in case of crude prices. What also surged overnight was the natural gas prices in Europe. They were up 15% on the higher side. Israel has taken a call to shut the production at Tamar fields, and that has led to this sudden surge in prices. So 15% up in Europe, 4% up in the U.S. markets as well is how natural gas was playing. And the safe haven gold also continues to be in the positive side. Over the week, we've seen 2.5% come in for the gold prices. So strong safe haven buying continuing here.
Okay, all right. So that's what's happening in the commodity space. Thank you so much, Manisha, for joining us. But we'll stay with this topic and listen into some important opinion coming in from RBC Capital Markets, Helima Croft.
I mean, I certainly think days and weeks from now is in the offing. I mean, right now, the question is, will we see a ground operation from Israel inside Gaza? And that's going to be a very difficult operation. Some are comparing it to the U.S. operations in places like Fallujah. The bigger question for markets is going to be, what was the role of Iran in this attack? Because if there is evidence that backs up the Wall Street Journal reporting that Iran coordinated this attack, there's going to probably be a significant response from Israel. And the question is, what does the United States do? So a lot is hinging on what type of support Iran gave to Hamas beyond what we know about weapons and money. Were they coordinating this? We have seen a significant increase in Iranian oil exports on the market. We have basically not enforced the congressional sanctions. I do think there's going to be an effort to tighten those sanctions. So I think we will see less Iranian barrels on the market, irrespective of whether we have some type of military engagement with Iran.
Okay, all right. With that, we'll slip into a short break. When we come back, we'll get you more news and updates on the other side. Stay tuned. Welcome back. You're still tuned into Power Breakfast on CNBC TV 18. Let's talk about some exciting news for the cricket lovers. India's most popular sport is set to make a comeback at the Summer Olympics in 2028. Reports suggest the LA 2028 organizing committee has decided to include cricket and 4 other sports at the Olympics. The proposal backs the inclusion of baseball, flag football, T20 cricket, lacrosse and squash. According to reports, the final decision is expected to be announced after the International Olympic Committee's Mumbai session on October 15th. If approved, cricket will be back in the global games after 128 years. Okay, all right. So that's all that's happening in the world of sports. Quickly taking a look at what the Asian markets are doing. Continue to do well. Nikkei, of course, is the top gainer. We have seen gains of around 2.5% there, followed by Hang Seng too, which has actually seen further gains from the levels that we saw at the start of the show. 2.2% higher there. And the GIFT Nifty, of course, is indicating that the start for our own markets, well, that could be in the green and we could reverse some of the losses that we saw yesterday as well. With that, we'll take your leave on this edition of Power Breakfast. Stay tuned. Bazaar Morning Call comes up next.